How do vampires say goodbye to each other? So long, suckers. What's going on, YouTube? Sorry, we're a little later than usual here. Didn't have time over our lunch break to record this video, but we have our 3 vendor refresh. The first one is inside of Apocrypha, inside of the Infinite Archive, a free-to-play zone if you've never been here before, using its own currency, archival fortunes. Now, we start off with the Infinite Table of Contents. Now, this actually is part of a book. So how you rate that as value is up to you. Cool little item. You can see how it looks. But normally this just drops from the Endless Archive, meaning that if you just farm the Infinite Archive, you're going to get this item, which also means too that if you probably want it to drop, it's not going to drop. So if you want to get the actual furnishing associated with this, the Infinite Tome, which just looks like a cool book, you're probably going to maybe consider getting it. But overall, that's only because if you're farming Infinite Archive a lot, you're going to have a lot of archival fortunes. And then you're going to consider, hey, maybe I want to buy this book that looks cool. It talks about the Infinite Archive, but realistically, it's not worth it for the average player, even though it is a cool and unique and rare furnishing item. Next up, we have Silver Thread Stitching. Now, this actually comes from Banished Cells to End Boss from the Elven Starter Zone. Now, I notoriously am not a huge fan of any dungeon run lead. And the reason for that is not necessarily because Banished Cells 2 is the peak difficulty, but it is definitely not the fastest dungeon in the world, and there's no guarantee that you get it. So you can find yourself spending potentially hours in here. Now, thankfully, Savara's Bane is not necessarily an essential mythic by any stretch of the imagination. It's probably more of like a high B tier mythic that some people may run in some very specific niche builds. So it's not one that you necessarily need to go out of your way to go purchase. But if you do want to skip potentially farming a dungeon, especially if you're a solo player who's going to farm it solo or queue into it, not a bad purchase necessarily. Next up is Kargadia's Shoulder. Now, this would be bound to you if you were to purchase it. So this would be something that you would purchase. It would be bound and untradeable. Normally, you can farm these during specific dungeon events, and then you can sell them to other players. This one is unsellable, but that's why it does have some sale history. For example, on PC, you can find people are selling these relatively cheaply. So probably something that you're just going to purchase with gold. But on Xbox, there's actually not that many listings of them. So depending on what console you play on, there may or may not be actual listings of these. But all that to say that you can see the shoulders a little bit, stylistic. It's very feathery. I don't know how many people are really excited about that, but it is an option if you would want to purchase it. Next up, we have our formulas, which now we can see the price history for these bad boys. You can see these actually do have some decent value to them of 23,000, 40,000, and 38,000, but that is for the recipe, meaning that you have to buy this recipe because it's bind on pickup. Then you're going to have to actually start selling these mirrors, which, to be fair, you can shatter this one, or you could use this gigantic Vivette carpet, or you could use this big mortar, I guess. But I just want to point out that a lot of people think that you can resell the recipe. You can't. You have to sell the made item. So you'd have to become an Argonian mortar bone salesman. Not impossible, but I do just want to point out that it's not free to make these things. You have to spend a bunch of mundane runes, alchemy resin, wax flint, fire opal, rakuta. And you can see that there's just not a lot of cheap things that go into these, especially whenever you see mundane runes or heartwood or anything like that. That's where you know these are going to be expensive to make and not something you can easily flip for a profit just by crafting like 1,000 mirrors. Next up is interesting. It says High Isle treasure maps. Now, notoriously, I love High Isle treasure maps, but the value of them is a bit all over the place because they're up for archival fortunes. You can see some people are selling them for to 18,000, 2,000, 1,500. And you can see in their sales data, they're kind of going all over the place when it comes to their data for their listings. And you can see the supply of these bad boys is also fluctuating pretty frequently as well. Basically, you can see this is the total amount of listings. At one point, we were at 300. Then we dropped down to 18. We're back up, back down again. So interestingly, though, they've just kind of seen a slow decline over time, but they are very low based on where they normally are for current listings. If you can see people selling these for like 1,000 to 2,000, I would buy them because you could get yourself the ancient Breton or the ancestral Breton motif, which is very valuable. We had our cat jump on us up on the video. Sorry, that's why I was like, oh, ancient ancestral. Here we go. Want to say anything? She's like, yeah, I get the maps if they were 1 to 2,000. Now, if you're on console, same concept. If you see people selling these for like 1 to 2,000 gold, easy pickup. Go open the actual treasure map itself and then see if you get one of the rare motifs that drop from there. I don't necessarily know if it's worth it to buy with Archival Fortunes because of all of the people that are currently listing them and trying to flip them for gold right now. So probably something that you might want to avoid putting your Archival Fortunes into, but still a decent item to consider buying with either gold, maybe Archival Fortunes if you get a lot of them, or you just want to roll for some rare items. Companion weapons is probably the biggest gamble because not only do you need to get a good trait, but you also have to get the actual good weapon to go with it. For example, if you want to make a tank companion, obviously you want to, get some reduced cooldowns, you want to get some reduced damage, you want to get some increased health. But if you get that on a two-hander, kind of a problem, not going to be super helpful for you. Or if you want a healer and you get it on a shield, similar concept where you're like, well, that's not exactly what I was hoping for. That's what makes this so convoluted. Even if you wanted a DPS companion and you get it on healing staff, you're like, well, that's not going to be optimal for this guy's build. So all of that to say, it is a huge gamble because those ones are generally worth the most if you can get it. In fact, at one point on the Xbox market, there was one shield with the tanking traits listed in all of the guild traders of purple quality. One. And I had to buy that for my boy Dave because I made a deal with him. So it's a gamble. It could be worth it, but it probably won't be. Next up is a deck fragment for 3,000 Archival Fortunes. If any of you buy this, you get slapped with a wet pool noodle. It literally drops from delves inside of the Telvanni Peninsula. Then we have our books, which to be fair, this book here actually does look pretty baller. Like it's got a really cool front and side piece to it. It's the ranks and titles of the House Telvanni. And then we have a non-cool looking book, which is the Working in the Infinite Panacoptium. I don't know. I didn't read the word ahead of time. I just rolled with it when I scrolled down. I don't know how to say it. And we have our Scripts, Expedition, Mangle, Multi-Target, and Gladiators, Tenacity. All of these are ones that I would generally skip. They're not essential to any builds. Yes, we have a PvP event upcoming, or a current PvP event. Maybe you're like, Jake, do I need any of these for getting ready for PvP? No, you don't need to worry about any of these bad boys. They're super expensive and not worth it. Also, we have our archival riddles, which we've seen 50 bajillion times. Drops from the Infinite Archive, comes from the Infinite Archive, not something you need to worry about. But then we have our Kroll Haj Hoto lore, which you can see here is used to combine to create a bunch of gobbledygook. You combine 25 of these along with 25 decoys used to advance the eponymous achievement. And you can see that they sell for 10,268 gold, meaning that you could buy these bad boys and get potentially 10,268 gold. I will tell you that some people may also invest in this because that means if I converted, the random amount of Archival Fortunes I have, which is 16,000, bought 10 of these, I would be getting 164,288 gold. So it's not a terrible gold investment. The problem is that a lot of people are going to do this, and the fragments are probably not going to be selling as consistently because of that. And next up, we are inside the Scholarium, which is inside of Ivea. This place becomes free to play very soon. In fact, during this week, this becomes a free to play zone. 2 more days, depending on when you watch this video. And the nice thing about this bad man pajama, so everything up at the top, the grimoires are static items. You buy those, they're static, they're here every week. You're not going to lose out on Soul Burst or Torchbearer, any of those. But the actual scripts here, these rotate every week. Savagery and Prophecy, Disease Damage, Generate Ultimate, Class Mastery, this one is here every week. And Leeching Thirst. Now, Leeching Thirst, Generate Ultimate, Disease Damage, and Prophecy are decent. Of the ones that are here, if you're brand new to scribing, I would just grab all of these. None of these are bad by any stretch of the imaginations. The ones that jump out at me are Generate Ultimate. That's probably the best one here if you just are at a bit of a budget, because you're generally getting a lot of these other resources from other places. And so if you're a brand new player, and scribing becomes open to you. If you have the gold, I would buy all of them because, again, now that you're going to do daily quests, you're going to start getting them for daily quests, but there's no guarantee you get the one that you want. And if you get a duplicate, you just sell it for 1,000 gold. So that's usually my recommendation for people getting into scribing. That's how I would do it. Buy all the ones, try to complete it, and then if you get duplicates in the future, you just resell them. And finally, we're inside the Imperial Ciy sewers to talk to the Telvar merchant. Now, if you've never been to this bad mamma jamma before, very straightforward. They're here inside of your Imperial Ciy camp. If you got a bunch of 12R during Zeal's Zenithar event, make sure you bank them if you do walk out into the PvP area so you don't die and lose them. But if you do have a couple, you might want to consider, do you want to buy any of these bad boy items? The first one we start off are on 2 sets. I'll tell you the first one, it's a lot. But basically, you deal lighter or heavy attack damage. You put a mark on somebody. The mark explodes. It does some magic damage. Not that good, in my opinion. I think that this would need to see a buff to really see any sort of meta utilization. It is cool in the sense that you're putting essentially like a haunting curse on your enemies, which would lead this to be more of like a PvP build type set that you might use. A lot of light and heavy attacks find themselves inside of the, it's going to be used for PvE solo content, which is perfectly fine. But this set, because it's doing kind of like a detonation, probably is more PvP focused, especially because you're going to have to build weapon and spell damage. I would say you're probably going to be in a situation where this is like a 7 out of 10 set. It's good because you can certainly you could make a good build with this, which is how I do my 1 through 10 scale. A 7 out of 10 is I could make a good build with this. You could do something where you put a lot of like burst things that detonate on somebody at one time and blow up players. It is a pretty effective way to kill players. Problem is there's a lot of sets that are 8, 9s, and 10s that'll do it significantly better. Next up is Ravaging. Each time you attempt to reduce a target's physical or spell resistance, you gain a stack of Ravager for 5 seconds, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 146. You can gain a stack every 1 second, and then at 4 stacks, the duration doubles but can't be refreshed. So this is a weird set. Also a set that's been nerfed and buffed. But it used to be a lot better than it was. Now it just got a slight increase to its weapon and spell damage, not enough to make it compete with most sets. All I have to say though, you could certainly stack this relatively easily with, things like caltrops, and reducing your target's physical and spell resistance is pretty frequent in today's day and age. Scribing abilities can do it. Normal subclassing skills can do it pretty easily. So from that angle, it's certainly easy to proc, but the problem is even if you get it all the way procced out, you're not getting a lot of bonus, and you're not getting it for that long, even though the uptime could be decent. I would say this is probably like a 7.1. You could build a good set with this. Reducing your target's physical and spell resistance is certainly helpful, but you're building it in a way where you're kind of limiting yourself as a build, and you're not building yourself as someone who's easily able to kill people, in my opinion, because you're kind of focusing on too many different things at once. Reducing everybody and then also giving yourself a minor. This is just a teensy tiny little weapon and spell damage bonus compared to what some other sets can do. Other sets can give you 500-600 weapon and spell damage for doing less work. Next up is the Torque Throat Guards. Unfortunately, not the Torque of the Alien King. This one just comes from world bosses in Craglorn, which, are more annoying than some of the normal world bosses, and this is a mythic that I think is undervalued. I think this is like a B tier mythic. A lot of people think this is like a D tier mythic, maybe a C tier. I firmly put this in the B tier. While your stamina is less than 50%, you increase your mag recovery. While your magic is less than 50%, you increase your stamina recovery. Yes, it has to be used on very specific builds. Some people are like, this is one of the worst mythics ever made. There are worse, and I do think that you could build a fun build with this, but yeah, it's not something that you need to spend your Telvar on. Next up is the Harpooners Waiting Kilt's lead of the Wolf Tail Sash, which I don't know why the Wolf Tail drops from Foul Fishing Holes in Murkmire, but this is actually a really good lead to get because it's one of the best mythics in the game. The Harpooners Waiting Kilt is super good. We'll talk about why in a moment. And if you were to buy this lead, you actually don't need to own Murkmire, which could potentially save you buying a whole DLC. But the Harpooners Waiting Kilt is notoriously one of the best mythics in the game, but it's narrow in what it's best for. So basically, it increases your crit chance and your crit damage when you're dealing damage and not taking damage. So you might think, okay, that's pretty good. But there's obviously a lot of situations where you're getting touched inappropriately, and that's going to be a bad situation because then essentially your mythic is not doing anything for you. So it's used very nichely in really good trials or certain dungeons where the DPS are really not taking any sort of chip damage or any sort of damage at all that would interrupt with its ability to build its stacks. But you can see a lot of the ones here come from free-to-play zones. You will need to own Blackwood, but Blackwood is where the dig site is. But these other ones like Balforen, Runes of Mazatoon, Shadowfen, you can, if you own those ones, you can skip out on Murkmire by buying the Wolf Tail Sash, which could be a good time save for you too, because it's also really hard to see Granted, we have add-ons now. If you have the newer consoles, it will make it easier for you, but finding those fishing holes can be really annoying when the whole zone is kind of a gigantic pond swamp thing, you know what I mean? Then we have Hughes Bane's treasure maps. These are easily skippable. Hughes Bane is certainly a better treasure map zone than most people give it credit for, just because of the sets that drop from there. But the problem is that the sets have been out for forever, so nobody's going out these days, 2025, and paying a premium for those sets that drop from there. So it's unfortunately an easy skip. Then we have the ring and of the both sets we talked about above. Then we have, ironically, brutality and sorcery. So we had savagery and prophecy. Now we got brutality and sorcery, immobilize and thieves swiftness. Now these are expensive in Telvar. Unless you've got millions of Telvar, this is going to be a pretty penny for you to invest in, because I'm also getting a discount because I already own these bad man pajamas. Meaning you're going to have to pay higher rates if you wanted to purchase these. They're not worth it. Unless the new Golden Pursuit comes out and it says, hey, you need to get this specific script to accomplish this Golden Pursuit, because that's going to, July 10th, Golden Pursuit coming out. We know about it. Exciting stuff. But unless it says specifically, you need to get brutality, sorcery, immobilize, and thieves swiftness, they're not worth it. And because they're too easy to get, and they're not doing anything for you from a combat perspective that's necessary. But we finish on a fragment, though, that you may want to consider, because Fragment of Vampire Lord actually drops from a place that's pretty annoying. To start, though, it changes your mist form, which looks pretty cool, although mist form not utilized nearly as often. But it's one, buff away from being back in the meta. And you can see you got to do quite a few different things. You got to do some delve bosses, world bosses. You got to do Stone Gardens, Moongrave Fame. But then you also have to do Kind's Aegis, which is not a fun trial to do. So probably worth it to do, because then you could just do these other 4 things, especially if you're a vampire and you just are like, Jake, I want, or a completionist who just wants to have all of the skill styles. Is probably a decent investment for you, because 50k Telvar is a lot. But even if you consider, converting all of it to gold, probably between 4 to 6 gold per Telvar, you're in like the 250-ish thousand gold range. Yeah, that's quite a bit of gold. But if you said, Jake, would you pay 250,000 gold to not have to farm Kind's Aegis with a bunch of people without thumbs, like with 11 other Davids? I would probably say, yeah, you take my money. And most people probably have Telvar and they're not spending it on anything too. Obviously, gold is the universal currency, but really most people just roll their Telvar into things like alchemy packs and Hajaku runes. So could be a better investment for you. That's up to you. And as our TLDR, make sure you go out and get all of the high isle treasure maps that you find cheaply listed. It's hard to just give you 6 mega servers worth of prices on those things, but if you see them significantly lower than normal, especially if you see the Ancestral Breton motif still sell relatively high, that means that people are just throwing these maps on the market. Nobody's actually digging them up, which is really what's going to determine the supply and demand and value of those maps regardless. So keep that in mind. Get the actual heroism script. I think it's one of the best scripts to have. It's purchasable with gold. It's a fantastic one to have. And then you could also potentially consider the archival fragment. If you want to get the loot, you could sell it for 10,000 plus gold. It is going to be a little bit difficult to sell because there's probably going to be quite a few people doing that. So it's going to be a little risky. So only do it if you have like archival fortunes. You just find yourself never spending and you just want to kind of throw them up on the market and see what happens. And then overall, we have some other unique items like a 50k fragment to get yourself a really cool looking skill style, but a skill style that's not super meta relevant, but also one that was meta relevant for many years. So there's definitely a chance that it comes back again. So 50,000 Telvar will keep you from farming one of the most nitpicky trials that's out there. So potentially a worthwhile investment. But overall, thank you guys again for watching. As always, we try to do these every Tuesday. I try to usually do them on my lunch break because it's better for me to upload a video at 1 p.m. That statistically is the best time YouTube has told me to upload a video. It's now 8 p.m. unfortunately, but we are 51 subscribers away from our next subscriber goal. So please hit the subscribe button. We're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do is be subscribed. Second giveaway is for a random like/comment on every video posted in the month of July. And the third thing is look for a hidden word to be flashed upon the screen. If you're the first person to find and comment that word, you will win. We had one hidden word already for the month of July. We're going to have a second one. Keep an eye out for that, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.